Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We are talking fantasy baseball. My name is Eric Henriksen alongside Josh Day, and it's a great day to be with you, chit chatting our way to fantasy baseball championships. We are just about done with the first week of the regular season. And on today's show, we are talking about players raising eyebrows early, good or bad, interesting lineup developments that we've seen, and how to approach roster evaluation early on. But Josh, first, it's made headlines all week since the Yankees scored 20 runs on the Milwaukee Brewers on Max Fried's debut. They committed 5 errors, but it didn't matter. We got to talk about these torpedo bats. Like, what do you make of these? Good, bad, does it matter? What do you think?
I think I think it's a fun thing to talk about, but I think it's just way too small of a sample size to really know what effect these bats will really have. They're meant to kind of optimize the player's barrel, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've moved the wood, if I'm not mistaken, from basically around the bottom of the handle to more around the barrel of the bat, and they've moved the barrel of the bat slightly down. Anthony
Right,
Volpe was the catalyst for this because he would always miss the barrel of the bat.
right.
So they've kind of just put more wood and strengthened the bat where most players hit the ball. And it's not a new thing, been around for about a year, but it's just garnered so much attention so quickly because the Yankees dropped a 20 piece on the Brewers.
One thing that I read that's actually pretty interesting is that you really, in order for them to be effective, they really need to be made tailored to the player. Because I believe Max Muncy of the Dodgers skipped all of that and just asked for, like, the base, of all statistics for his, where the sweet spot should be. And I think it hasn't produced great results, and I think there was news that he ditched it a couple games into the regular season. Also, interestingly enough, Aaron Judge isn't using it. So,
I loved his quote.
you
I loved
know,
this quote. He was like, "Have you seen what I've done the last couple of years? I don't need it."
right.
and and I mean, by evidence by his hot start to the season, I don't think he needs it. So yeah, I think it's probably much ado about nothing, but it is a piece of equipment that I think nobody ever really talks about, and I think it's fascinating now. It's just now getting sort of revolutionized by technology. I think it's interesting. It should be fascinating to see what happens rest of the season with it. But let's just start talking about some players raising eyebrows early, and not because of that torpedo bat. All right, so first player up, Rafael Devers has made headlines for all the wrong reasons when it comes to baseball. He started off the season extremely poorly, and that poor start continues. Now, it's only been a week. Josh, I know you are a Rafi Devers investor. We did talk about how you targeted him in the draft. We talked about that last week. So, what have you seen from Devers? What is going on with him? Because this is not the start anyone saw coming.
Yeah, it's very discouraging. So far, I will say, last night there was reasons to be optimistic. His bat speed increased, and he reached base with a double, I believe, and a walk. So there are signs, positive signs. It's not all doom and gloom. Yeah, I think this is an interesting case. There's a lot of things kind of going into this struggle. There was last season he had his shoulder issues. However, he's claimed that he's healthy. However, some data suggests his bat speed was down. There's also all the drama surrounding him now being the permanent DH, with Alex Bregman taking over third base, which the Red Sox and Devers have said isn't an issue anymore. So I think the answer lies somewhere in between. He only had 14 at bats in spring training. So I think that also says a lot to what's going on. I think he's just, didn't have the same runway that other players did. And also, I think there's something to be said about adjusting from being a positional player to just being a DH. So, I think it can be a lot of factors. I'm taking encouragement by what he did the past couple of games, and hopefully he can build off that. So, I'm just gonna not panic. I'm not gonna make any trades right now because you're gonna get nothing of his true value. So I would say if you're frustrated, keep him on your bench, see what happens, and play the wire, or sit tight and hope he turns it around.
Yeah, this is a guy who started, I believe, 0 of 19 with 15 strikeouts was the number that I saw, which is not good. And even if you have a stretch like that in the middle of the season, I feel like that would make some sort of headlines somewhere because that's an absurd strikeout rate. Being that it happened at the opening of the season, the first week, it definitely made headlines and is magnified because of that. I think the lack of spring training, the lack of ramp up that he had, he's a bit behind. So, like you said, exercise some patience. This is a guy you invested an early round draft pick in. Exercise patience. It's also, kind of cold up in Boston, having lived there myself. I know early April is still kind of winter. Now, another guy who struggled out of the gate really, really hard. So hard that he got demoted to AAA. And that's former All-Star David Bednar, the closer, or should I say, former closer of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, I mean, I believe he struggled last season, right?
Yep, he did. I drafted him as like a good discount, high upside closer coming off of 2 very good seasons, 3 really,
Yeah.
and it did not it was not great owning him last year.
No. Yeah, so I wonder, I remembered that one during draft season. I just kind of avoided him for that reason.
Yeah, this is a guy with an expected ERA of 17. Not great. He's got an 18 walks per 9. Now, we're talking 1 inning pitched in 3 games. I mean, that is like the definition of riding the struggle bus.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing about closers is that very few of them maintain their closerdom for more than 1 or 2 seasons. So this could just be the end of the road for David Bednar. Hopefully, you invest that much draft capital in him, and you can just pick up, Luke Jackson, Dennis Santana of the Pirates. He seems to be taking over, although I think the options for the Pirates are a little suspect. So yeah, I think, you can just kind of move on. If you have an NA spot, you can stash him if you don't have anybody else to stash in your NA spot. But I think you can kind of move on and just play the closer carousel.
Yeah, to me, that Pirate situation, unless somebody emerges as having a great season, it's an avoid for me. I'm in need of a closer in our 10-team league, and I just had no interest in diving into that situation. I don't think the other options are going to be any better. I don't think Luke Jackson is a great replacement either. You're probably looking at the same numbers from Luke Jackson at some point in the year.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would just say avoid the Pirates situation altogether. They're also clearly not a very good team, even though they are running. O'Neill Cruz is 6 stolen bases ready, but yeah, that's a clear avoid to me unless someone very much emerges as a favorite. But staying within the same division, a pair of Cardinals have been off to red hot starts, pun intended there. That's the catcher, sleeper darling this year, Ivan Herrera, and then Lars Nootbaar. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me a third time.
Yeah.
Gosh, what do you think? Let's start with Lars Nootbaar because this feels like a been there, done that situation.
Certainly does. It does feel like a case of deja vu, but looking at his numbers so far, I should say, I think, all of this conversation about players and their early season stats is just like, we have to have a giant caveat of there's just a lot of signal noise.
Small sample size.
Small sample size. So, but the early returns, like you love to see it. He's hitting the ball hard. His max EV is 11, and his exit velocity is 94. So that's really great. Good launch angle. So I guess it'd be interesting to see check in at the end of April to see where, if he can maintain these numbers. What are you expecting for Lars Nootbaar?
I am expecting him to get hurt again at some point, because that seems to be the theme with
Yeah,
Nootbaar. He shows promise.
yeah,
And sometimes, and it hasn't been at the beginning of the season normally because he's been hurt. And he comes back, he shows promise, and then he gets hurt again. So it's like a cycle for him. It's just he's showing the promise right off the bat. And when guys do things in the first week and in April in general, we freak out because what if this is the breakout? What if this is
right.
the I'm getting, second or third round value from picking up an undrafted player this season? I have a hard time buying in to guys, and this is part of the discussion that we'll have later about how to approach roster evaluation. But somebody like Nootbaar, who, like I said, we've been there, done that with him. Sure, the numbers are great; they're exactly what you want to see, like you said. But I just can't get over the fact that I've been burned multiple times by
Yeah,
buying into to him in particular. Now, someone we haven't really had the chance to buy into because this, I believe, is his first full season. That's Ivan Herrera, who had a 3-homer game earlier this week. When was the last time you saw a catcher have a 3-homer game?
I mean, I'm a little skeptical, just because I don't really know who he is. He's very new to the game, so it's hard to gauge exactly what he's gonna to give us long term. I mean, didn't Carson Kelly have like a huge game the other day?
Yeah,
Like,
see,
is I guess random catchers erupting?
that's how you know it's early in the season, right? Because they're all healthy. They're not banged up from being behind
You
the plate
know.
yet.
I mean, I think the catcher position is just so dreadful and boring that we're just like grasping at anything to get hyped. I mean, look at Austin Wells. People were like freaking out that first weekend when he hit 2 home runs, and now he's kind of an afterthought. But looking at Ivan Herrera's numbers, I mean, again, he's hitting the ball hard. I got an okay launch angle. Strikeout rate isn't terrible. He's looking good early on, but what's it going to look like at the end of April? What's it going to look like at the end of, May going into June? I think it's just something you should monitor. I mean, if you're in a deep league and your catcher isn't really giving you anything, and you have like kind of a back end catcher, maybe you waited on catcher, you can probably move on. I have, another Cardinal. I drafted Wilson Contreras, who's been off to a dreadfully slow start, but I'm not going to drop him this early for Ivan Herrera. I
No,
think
please don't.
it's better
Please don't.
it's it's better to be conservative. If you're in a one catcher league, I think you can just enjoy this from looking at it on the waiver wire.
I would say proceed with caution. I would actually rather have Austin Wells than Ivan Herrera personally. And Herrera has so far split with Pedro Pajes, the other catcher on
Right.
the Cardinals roster. So, just be careful. If you have any of those consensus like top 8 guys in draft season, don't do anything rash. And I would say with Lars Nootbaar too, just to touch back on him, if you're gonna add Nootbaar, maybe use that final roster spot or two that we've alluded to that you can play with early in the season to add the hot bat. I personally would not add him over the guys we talked about last week, like Spencer Torkelson and Kyle Manzardo, only because I've been burned by Nootbaar multiple times. What do you think about that? Would you take Nootbaar over like Torkelson and Soderstrom and Manzardo, any of those other early season darlings? Where does he kind of fall on that list for you?
I think it's context dependent. If you're a Freddie Freeman owner, it would be prudent to pick up somebody like Manzardo or Torkelson. But I think it's based on kind of what you need position wise.
But just again, another guy. Red, red flag, yellow flag, proceed with caution.
Right.
All right, Josh. So some interesting lineup developments that I didn't see coming, good, bad, or indifferent. And I kind of want to talk about these three guys as a collective unit because they all are hitting cleanup for their respective teams. And that's Brandon Nimmo of the Mets, Jackson Merrill of the Padres, and I never in a million years would have ever guessed that this next guy is going to hit cleanup for any team ever. And that's Andres Jimenez, the light hitting
Yeah.
former Cleveland Guardian, now of the Toronto Blue Jays. But you got Brandon Nimmo hitting behind Pete Alonso, Juan Soto, and Francisco Lindor. And you've got Jackson Merrill hitting behind Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. and Xander Bogaerts, I think. It doesn't matter when you have Machado and Tatis who the third person is. What do you make of these guys hitting cleanup? Jimenez? 3 home runs already.
I don't know how long this will last with Jimenez. I think it's the start of the season, and a lot of what we're seeing is not set in stone. Looking at the Blue Jays in particular, I'm not sure. I mean, after Santander, it's a little like there's kind of a fall off in terms of their offense.
Yeah.
So I think there's a possibility if George Springer can show some signs of life again, like there's a chance he might move up in the order if Jimenez drops off, which I think he might. But it seems like I'm not sure that they have a whole lot of options, and I don't see Jimenez hitting higher up in the order.
I find it so interesting to have a guy whose career high in home runs, I believe, was 17 back in 2022, which was still, I believe, one of the juiced ball years. But that was his first full season in the major leagues. He's still only 26 years old. He's cut his strikeout rate every year, but I just don't see an ISO of 423 sticking around.
No.
3 homers already. I mean, he hit 9 all of last year. So he's a third of the way to his total. His homers have dropped every season from 17 to 15 to 9.
Mhm.
Sure, maybe he hits a couple more than 9, but man, that is just like the last guy I thought was going to hit cleanup for any team.
I'm a little surprised about the Mets and that Vientos. Like I would have Vientos hitting higher up. I mean, based on all the hype and what he did in the offseason, but he's seemingly struggling out of the gate, so maybe that's why they have Nimmo up there ahead of him.
I'm wondering if it's a lefty-righty thing because
Oh, yeah, that too.
Lindor's a switch hitter, and then you have Soto left-handed, Alonso right-handed, and then Nimmo left-handed, and then Vientos right-handed, right?
Yeah.
I'll say this. I expected Nimmo to be the leadoff hitter. I would have Nimmo leading off, a good OBP guy, right? Then I'd have Lindor, then I'd have Soto, then I'd have Alonso. I just feel like, to me, that's your better run-producing lineup. I think
Mhm.
that's better for fantasy purposes, too, because then Lindor has RBI opportunity. Yeah, so I did find it interesting that Nimmo, not known as a power hitter, as your prototypical cleanup guy, 20, 25 home runs, totally within the
Yeah.
realm of possibility, but I just always thought of him as an on-base guy. So I'm
Mhm.
a little surprised that he's not batting leadoff where he has in the past for that team. But I know one guy that the third of this trio that you're absolutely enamored with, and as you should be, and rightfully so, is Jackson Merrill hitting cleanup for the Padres.
Yeah, and he's off to a hot start. I think he's very deserving of his placement. Also, given the team context, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to have him hitting up there. So yeah, I mean, I think you got to be happy with the returns you're getting off Merrill so far.
His StatCast page now, on April 4th, a week into the season, the StatCast still shows 2024 by default, but you can click on 2025 if you click on the year. It is lit up on fire. This guy is the real deal. I mean, there's a reason why somebody at 20 years old makes the team out of spring training, and then is featured prominently as an everyday player, skipping AAA if I'm not mistaken. I mean, this guy, he's striking out 14.8% of the time. His expected WOBA is 515. I mean, he's got 4 barrels already. on 21 batted balls. This guy he's just a flat out hitter, man. He is special.
Do you think he's going to have a better season than Brandon Nimmo? Because right now, looking at the projections, they're kind of similar. 20, 25 homers, 10 to 15 steals. I think Merrill potentially will have a better batting average.
I would give Merrill the edge in batting average. And I'd give Nimmo the edge in runs. But I do think that overall, at the end of the season, I do think Merrill's going to have the better year.
I think so. I think he has the highest upside.
Oh, yeah. Of these three guys, yeah. And I just think Jackson Merrill is probably the best player of the three of them.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, I give Merrill the edge there. He's just, this guy can hit. He's a hitter, man. I got to look at his contact percentage. Probably doesn't swing and miss ever. 90% contact percentage. What? Now that means 9 out of 10 times he swings, he hits the ball. What?
Yeah, I know player development, they say, is not linear, but it is really nice to see when young players, maintain positive growth. And it certainly seems like Jackson Merrill is picking up where he left off from last season.
When you have a called strike percentage as a rookie of 10%, that means you got a good eye.
Yeah.
So, oh man, this guy is special. If you drafted Jackson Merrill, I don't care what round you drafted him in, I can guarantee you got good value for it. And I know, Josh, you have him as a keeper in our 10-team league. Would have been nice if he kept his dual eligibility. He should be eligible only in the outfield in most leagues, probably 90% of leagues. The same amount of leagues, percentage-wise, as he makes contact. Unbelievable. All right, and the last interesting lineup development, unfortunately, came to a screeching halt, and that was Colton Cowser leading off for the Orioles. A little surprising to me, considering his strikeout rate is up near 30%. But Colton Cowser was leading off for a potent Baltimore Orioles lineup, slides into first base, and just destroys his thumb. Let that be a lesson, kids. Don't slide into first base.
No.
But what that does is it opens up an opportunity, an everyday opportunity for Heston Kjerstad. Former top prospect, hasn't really been given an everyday chance at the major league level yet, but now he gets one. Josh, any interest in Heston Kjerstad?
I think maybe in the deep leagues, I'm not interested in him in like our 10-team Yahoo league. The Orioles have shown us what they're going to do with him last season when he was in and out of the lineup on any given day. Especially now with Gunnar Henderson back in the lineup. I just think it'll just be hard to predict, how much playing time he's going to get. And then I think it's going to be hard for some of these guys to gain momentum in that way. So I'm not terribly interested in Heston Kjerstad, to be honest.
I believe at the same time the Orioles called up Dylan Carlson.
He was sent down today. So maybe that guarantees Kjerstad a little bit more playing time, but I would say this, another giant red caution, yellow, whatever color you want to make your caution flag. Alert. In his limited playing time so far this year, he struck out 45.5% of the time. Last year, he struck out 29% of the time. And we're talking about a majority of the bats against opposite-handed pitching. Right.
So it's not a great sign at all. I agree with you. I think Kjerstad isn't a void in most of the shallow leagues. If you're desperate in deeper leagues, I bet you can still find a different option. So I would just say avoid. And about the Orioles in general, I do think they tip their hand on how they're going to play people because they are pretty aggressive with the guys that are going to play all the time, with their prospects that are really central to their future. Like, why isn't Kobe Mayo up? Well, maybe they don't really believe in him. So I think it's the same thing with Heston Kjerstad. I would say leave him on the waiver wire. But I did think it was interesting Colton Cowser, despite that strikeout percentage, was leading off.
Yeah, I would say if, some players we spoke about earlier, like if Brandon Nimmo or Lars Nootbaar, if they're on the wire and you're in need of an outfield spot, I would pick them up over Heston Kjerstad.
Is Colton Cowser a hold for you? I have him in the 10-teamer. I had an available IL spot, so I'm holding him because I don't need the IL spot yet. What would you do? Because he's going to be out for like 2 months.
If you have a free IL spot, sure, you can hold on to him. I wonder how useful he's going to be in a 10-team league. I think he's going to be, I think he's going to be kind of like how he was last season, where he was very streaky, like where he'd hit like 4 home runs in a week and then do nothing for you for, a week and a half. And I also think he's not going to do you any much good in batting average. I think he could probably be a liability in that shallow of a format, but he's still a relatively young player. So, I think he has the potential to hit 30 home runs.
If you have that spare IL spot like I do, give him a hold for now. But a thumb injury, and as bad as it is for him, because I believe his thumb bent all the way back, he may not be much use regardless when he comes back, because he's got to get strength back in that hand, and that's going to take some time. So yeah, Colton Cowser, I think what made him most interesting was hitting leadoff for the Orioles. Doesn't mean he was going to keep that spot all season, but that's where he started. Josh, I want to talk to you about how you approach roster evaluation early on. We had this discussion just one day when we weren't recording, because we play in leagues with each other, so we see you add a guy in one league, I add the same guy in another league. We are the Spider-Man meme. We text that back and forth to each other all the time.
Yeah.
So how do you approach roster evaluation early on? Do you think short term? Do you think long term at this point? Do you explore trades? Are you aggressive? Are you conservative? How do you look at your roster and decide what to do now?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. And I think in some ways you have to be aggressive and conservative. And what I mean by that is I think you need to be conservative and patient with your draft capital. Like, I don't think, like for example, Rafael Devers, if you're frustrated with him, you should not go out and shop him for pennies on the dollar. I think you're better off sticking him on your bench and, seeing how he progresses over the next couple of weeks. Maybe he'll take an L because, you have some struggling players, but in the long run, I think you just have to sit tight and play the long game, because it is the long season, and player production ebbs and flows. But at the same time, I think ideally you'll have, one or two, spots at the end of your roster, whether it be pitching or hitting, that you can pick up guys off the waiver wire that are, showing signs. Maybe they're post-type sleepers like Spencer Torkelson, Kyle Manzardo, Lars Nootbaar, Jordan Walker, and even veterans like Nolan Arenado. So I think it's worth really paying attention to that, and then doing your homework, going on to sites like Fangraphs and just seeing what's under the hood, what are they doing early on, stuff like that, so that, you can, if Devers is struggling, you can stick him on your bench. Maybe no one drafted Arenado, plug him in at third base, and there you go. You have a wealth spring of of production while Devers figures stuff out. So I don't know. I think it's patience with your, the draft capital, and then maybe you have a couple spots to turn over and see what happens.
Yeah, you don't want to be too conservative where you're just passing on everybody. Sometimes I catch myself going, oh man, maybe I'll add this guy. And then I look at my roster, I go, well, he's not better than him. He's not better than him. He's not better than him. And I'm looking at the back end of my roster when I do that. But the truth of the matter is, yeah, he could be better than that guy. So I sometimes find myself being a little too conservative, and then I miss out on some talent sometimes. But, you do have to be willing to turn over those last 4 spots on your roster to maybe find that hidden gem. Always be willing to churn and burn, as they say.
Mhm.
But don't do anything rash when it comes to guys that you've invested maybe your first 8 to 10 rounds of draft capital in. Maybe be aggressive on young guys. I know I've heard you say this before. Look for discernible skill changes in
Mhm.
guys. Don't do anything rash with certain players. Don't be afraid to cut bait with other players. A move that I just made in the 12 team league that we're in. Remember, I missed out on shortstop, so I drafted Tommy Edman. I also drafted
Mhm.
Carlos Correa as a backup. Correa's off
Yep.
to a slow start. I don't like my pitching in that league, so I cut bait with Correa early and
Yep.
picked up a pitcher. Whether or not Tyler McGill will be somebody on the roster after today, I don't know. But now that's a roster spot because I drafted Correa so late that I can just churn and burn, find the guy,
Yep.
and that might stick at least for a little bit, if not for longer. But yeah, so roster evaluation at this point in the year can be really tricky. There's got to be like a good word for it. I want to say like conserve aggressive.
Yeah.
Like we'll maybe next week we'll come back and we'll figure out what that word is. We'll combine conservative and aggressive. Aggressive.
Aggressive. I
Uh,
will say too, like in regarding rookies, I would exercise patience. I would give it a good 3 months, maybe more. Don't just cast those guys aside. If they're not producing, just try and find space to keep them on your roster, especially in keeper formats. Because I've definitely been burned by not giving guys enough time, mainly by trades.
Let them cook, as the kids say. Especially guys who haven't played a ton of games in the minor leagues. Like I know Cam Smith was a hot name towards the end of
Right.
spring training. He's off to an abysmal start. Give him time. If you have a bench spot, put him there.
An interesting tidbit on Cam Smith. If you remember our conversations about baseball reference and their opposition quality stat, Cam Smith had one of the lowest opposition quality ratings of all eligible hitters.
Wow.
It
So
was like
the
6, I
proof,
think.
the proof.
So yeah, I think he was making noise against probably not the best competition. Take that for what you will.
Again, it's been
Hmm.
a week. Give him time. He could adjust. Wyatt Langford took some time to adjust. Julio Rodriguez took some time to adjust.
Bobby Wood Jr.
Bobby Witt Jr. took some time to adjust. You can just see it because it happens time and time again with these top prospects. So that does it for this episode. Next time, we're going to talk a lot about who to add and who to drop. We did a little bit of that today, but we're going to really dedicate an episode to that next week. And we're going to play a new game. One of my favorite titles of games, Barrels, Bombs, and BS. So you're going to want to tune in for that to see exactly what that is. But please subscribe. We're available on all major podcast platforms, including the Odyssey app. I found that out, so that's fun. And give us a like, a 5-star rating, a kind review. We will read all of them. And if there's anything you want us to talk about, drop us a message. For Josh Day, I'm Eric Hendrickson saying, enjoy a great baseball weekend.